While being a Survivor Superfan might not necessarily be the best label to have, the upside of being a Survivor Superfan is that you're a fan of the best show on TV and are a part of a very awesome and hardcore community. All Superfans have different opinions and views on the game, but one thing I think all Survivor Superfans can agree on is that it would be a dream come true to actually play the game they love. And while 99% of Superfans will never get this chance, a select few have not only been picked to play this great game, but were even casted to specifically fit the Superfan archetype. What's going on, guys? I'm FlynnMasters, and today we'll be talking about the success and failures of Superfans in Survivor. Similar to my Poverty video, I won't be talking about every Superfan to play Survivor. I'll specifically be talking about players casted to fit that archetype. I'll link the archetypes article in the description below, but the Superfan archetype is called the Know-It-All. I'll touch on most of them, and also a couple in the Nervous Nerd section. Also, this list will only consist of men, as men are really the only ones to be casted to be Superfans. At the end of the video, I'll touch on a few Superfan women, but again, women aren't usually casted to specifically fit this archetype like men are. So with all that said, let's look at the history of Superfans in Survivor. The first true Superfan came in Season 6, Survivor Amazon, and boy, did this man give a good first impression of the Superfan stereotype. The man in question is of course Rob Cesternino, aka founder of Rob Has a Podcast. Rob came into the Amazon having not only studied the first 5 seasons of Survivor, but also Survivor's sister show, Big Brother. In fact, Rob had originally applied for Big Brother 3, but got switched to Survivor instead. Man, whoever in production made that decision, thank you so much. Rob C would go on to change Survivor forever with his gameplay in the Amazon. He started the game in the middle of 2 sides, one led by Ryan and one led by Roger. He ended up siding with Roger's group, blindsided Ryan in a 4-3-1 vote. After this, Rob stayed in the majority up until the swap, but he wasn't in the core of the majority. So when the tribes did swap, this was a blessing in disguise for him, as he formed a close bond with the woman on Jabiru 2.0, and he solidified his friendship with Matt, someone who was also not in the core majority on the men's tribe. When the merge came, Rob did something we had never seen in Survivor. He flipped back and forth between alliances to advance his own game. At the final 8, he flipped on Dina after she plotted to take out his closest ally in Alex, only to blindside Alex the following tribal after telling Rob he was number 4 in the alliance. Then at the final 6, he took out the swing vote in Christy after she didn't reveal which side she would vote with that tribal. Again, this gameplay was unprecedented, as we had either seen the majority alliance dominate Survivor or one flip and that was it. We had never seen one person maneuver through the game like Rob did in the Amazon. While he ultimately fell short of winning the Amazon, Rob's insane gameplay inspired many future Survivor players, but also put a target on his back, as he was voted out at the first Tribal Council in All-Stars, and might have even put a target on future Survivor Superfans. And speaking of being a target, let's talk about the first failed Superfan in Survivor, Brooke from Survivor Vanuatu. Now yes, taking one look at Brooke, you wouldn't think he was casted to be in the Superfan archetype, and I would agree with that. However, for one, the article believes he was indeed casted for that spot, and 2, not only did he make it clear he was a Superfan, but Jeff himself pointed out at the reunion show how much of a fan he was of Survivor. So I'm going to include him, although there's really not much to say. With Brooke not looking like the prototypical Superfan, he was relegated to the bottom of the men's tribe in Vanuatu, with the Fat 5 containing the majority. And after the men lost the first immunity challenge thanks to Chris, the original target was JP, but the target switched to Brooke instead, as JP was seen as a harder worker than Brooke, and so in a 5-3-1 vote, Brooke became the first boot of Vanuatu. Again, I really do wonder if there was more to this boot here. The show made it seem like Brooke wasn't pulling his weight, but is that just simply the narrative the show put on to explain this boot better, as he was who the Fat 5 just so happened to pick? Or maybe, did they actually get Superfan vibes from him, and wanted to take him out for being a potential Rob 2.0? While Brooke's archetype is certainly ambiguous, he was no doubt a Superfan, and suffered the ultimate Superfan nightmare in being the first person voted out of Survivor. In Season 11, Guatemala, we saw an in-between of a success and failure from this archetype in Brian Corridan. Brian of course absolutely dominated the pre-merge, leading the tribe in the Morgan blind side, and when he was sent to the minority at the tribe swap, he was able to get the majority to flip on one of their own in Blake. Unfortunately, his dominance did eventually come to an end soon after, as the majority took him out the next vote. Brian is still considered to this day one of, if not the best pre-merge player in Survivor, but his aggressive gameplay could only carry him so far, especially in old school Survivor, which is why he would be such a great choice to bring back for a second chance. But then in Season 15, we saw a Survivor Superfan's dream come true, as Todd Herzog won Survivor China. Todd had watched every season of Survivor, going all the way back to Survivor Borneo when he was 14 years old, and at the age of 22, he got to live out his dream in China, and he took full advantage of it. Knowing he was going to play aggressively and live up to the Superfan archetype, formed a majority alliance with the big time threats, such as Aaron and James, and of course formed a season-long partnership with Amanda to start the game. Todd used these alliances to dominate the pre-merge, and at the merge, he and Amanda played a Rob C style game, flipping back and forth between the majority and minority to take out who they wanted. He then had without question the best Final Tribal Council performance of all time, completely owning up to his schemish and cutthroat gameplay, winning Survivor China in a 4-2-1 vote. Todd really won Survivor in a way we had never seen before, as he was able to play a dominant and cutthroat game, yet never needed to win a mutie or play idols to advance his game, as despite his schemish play, he was still able to gain the trust and loyalty of players like Amanda and Courtney, and always had meat shields like James and PG in front of him to hide his threat level. Todd simply dominated Survivor China and became the first true superfan to win the show, and man, was it fun to watch. Following Todd's win, we did have a long dry spell of superfans in Survivor, as this was the era of casts being heavily recruited and being mostly good eye candy for TV. We of course got Eric as a massive fan, if not the only true superfan on the fans tribe in Micronesia, but again, he doesn't fit that archetype. Stephen Fishback of course could absolutely fit that archetype, but being that he was a bit older and was actually recruited for the show despite being a pretty big fan, I don't feel he quite belongs on the list. But without question, in Survivor South Pacific, we got the big time superfan of the era, and probably the most famous superfan to ever play Survivor, John Cochran. Cochran is literally what you picture when you think of superfan. Heck, he's probably what you guys think I look like. A skinny nerdy frame from an early 20s guy who literally writes papers about Survivor at Harvard Law School. But for the first time ever, the pressure of Survivor really got to a superfan. Cochran obviously felt extremely vulnerable in the first couple days of South Pacific, given his stature, and when Savai lost the first immunity challenge, he almost talked his way into being the first boot, but luckily, he was able to survive. Cochran also survived 3 other pre-merge votes where his name was on the chopping block, and then at the merge, Cochran made the infamous move of flipping on Savai on the revote, which obviously led to the passion of Cochran throughout the rest of the game, and of course, the second Upolo no longer needed him, he was voted out. Again, this is where being a superfan probably came into play for Cochran. He remembered how terrible the rock jaw of Marquesas was, and was probably replaying that in his mind all day, and once Ozzy misplayed the idol, he wasn't taking any chances, despite the odds being massively in Savai's favor. And yes, Cochran was obviously at the bottom of Savai as well, but at least he was number 6 instead of number 7, and you gotta figure people like Ozzy and the Keith Whitney duo would have been targeted over him, and I truly think he would have made a deep run had Savai survived the rock draw. But in the end, I guess you could say that avoiding the rock draw was the right move for Cochran in the long run, as due to the big flip, and lasting a couple more episodes as a result, Jeff and production had to bring him back the first chance they got for Survivor Caramoan, Fans vs Favorites 2. In one of the most dominant victories ever, Cochran first joined the Stealth RLS Alliance to start the game, to targeting the 3 amigos at the mid-merge, to orchestrating some massive endgame blindsides, all the while hiding behind his closest ally in Dawn, who took most of the blame when it came to the jury. This amazing gameplay, combined with his unexpected 4 individual challenge wins, gave this superfan the title of Sole Survivor, becoming the second superfan to win the show. Now yes, Cochran's win was one of the most laid out wins ever, due to pre-game alliances and the fans tribe being absolutely pathetic, but nonetheless, you still have to go out there and get the job done, and Cochran did that and then some, as he literally played a perfect game. Cochran definitely had a bumpy first ride, but as any superfan knows, second chances don't come often, and he took full advantage of his second chance. And above all else, he became one of Jeff's favorite players. Now that alone might be better than the $1 million. While Cochran may have been the most famous Survivor superfan, there probably isn't a more beloved Survivor superfan than Spencer Bledsoe. Spencer came into Kageon a self-proclaimed student of the game. This, combined with the fact that he was put on the Brains tribe, all but made his archetype very clear to the other players. And after Cochran dominated Caramoan just 2 seasons prior, this may have even put a target on Spencer's back to start the game. But Spencer would make it all the way to the Final 4 in Survivor Kageon, despite his insane bad luck he had throughout the game. He was on the bottom of one of the worst tribes ever, yet somehow was able to make it to the merge, where he immediately was sent back to the bottom again after Cass's flip. Yet despite being on the bottom the entire merge, he used his relationship with Tony and surprise and challenge dominance to scratch and claw his way to day 37, where he ultimately fell just short of an insane underdog victory. But this underdog run made Spencer a massive fan favorite, and he was an easy choice for the fans to vote back in for second chance. He once again was at the bottom to start the game, and could have easily been a pre-merge boot, if not for Chaos Cass of all people saving him at the final 14. But after this, Spencer, for the first time in Survivor, was finally able to take some control in the game and play from the top. He formed a tight bond with Jeremy, and the two went back and forth between voting blocks to take out their targets when need be. He once again won 3 immunities, and this time, made it to day 39. Unfortunately, Jeremy's game was simply much more appealing to the jury, leading to a 0-vote finalist finish for Spencer. But despite not completing the ultimate goal of winning Survivor, Spencer is still to this day a massive fan favorite on 2 of Survivor's most popular seasons, and was a big-time player in each season. If anything, that type of resume may be more appealing to a superfan than just being a forgotten about winner. On to season 33 now, and at this point, most, if not all players casted on Survivor are pretty big fans of the show. But again, there's fan and then there's superfan, and Adam Klein was no doubt a Survivor superfan. An avid watcher of all English-speaking Survivor franchises, and even partook in Survivor games before going onto the show, this was of course a dream come true for Adam. Adam's game in Millennials vs Gen X is so interesting, especially considering the fact that he was a superfan. He made some great plays, like holding on to his idol despite his name being thrown around, and did a fantastic job of finding perfect allies that were loyal, shields, and beatable at the end. But he also did make mistakes that you wouldn't expect from a superfan, like telling Taylor about his reward steal advantage after literally voting out his showmance, and going to rocks with an idol in his pocket, despite this season being so crazy, to where we in fact saw Will flip the very next tribal. Adam was able to get to day 39 and win the game unanimously, a win so dominant that he knew he won right after the season ended, and was able to tell his mom he won before she passed away. Adam didn't play a dominant game like Todd or Cochran, but he also didn't play a sloppy superfan game like the superfans we've seen recently, and I think that just goes to show his great level of composure, as despite him making mistakes, he never panicked and did what he needed to do to win Survivor and have a dream become reality. His superfandom also led to one of the most iconic moments in Winners at War, as since he knew he was going home, he took one last desperate shot, trying to play the podium idol. He of course got this idea from Survivor South Africa, again, a franchise that most casual Survivor fans aren't even aware of. 2 seasons later, we got the heart-throbbing superfan of Ryan Ulrich grace our screens. Ryan immediately made his superfan presence known, as he found an advantage on the marooning, something he had seen from Sierra Dawn Thomas the previous season. He ultimately gave this advantage to Chrissy on the Heroes tribe, and formed a close and unlikely bond with Devin on the Hustlers tribe, and those 3 players would end up making the final 3. Or, well, should have made up the final 3. Still though, it's so interesting that Ryan's superfan knowledge is literally what caused him to go far. Yes, he formed other bonds and was a great social player in general, but does he really become that close with Chrissy if she hadn't received a massive gift from him to start the game? To this day, people still debate on who wins a Ryan, Devin, Chrissy final 3, but from what I've heard, Ryan is the most popular answer, or at least the one that has made the most sense for the people that have dug deep for info. So basically, had it not been for a last minute fire making challenge, Ryan's super fandom could have literally been the catalyst that led him to winning season 35, as he was the only one to realize that there might just be a very important advantage at the marooning. But since we've been talking about mostly great Survivor superfans, let's now talk about probably the worst superfan to play Survivor, Jacob Derwin. Jacob is a classic example of letting the pressure get to you and flaming out too quickly in Survivor. Being that Jacob didn't exactly have a beach body on a cast full of young and beautiful people, he immediately felt like an outsider, and instead of trying to make bonds, his paranoia got the best of him. Between looking for idols, telling obvious and blatant lies, and falling for Stephanie's flirty attitude far too easily, Jacob's Survivor run was a complete crash and burn, as he was the second boot of Ghost Island. But on the bright side, he was the first person to visit Ghost Island, and despite being the second boot, he is literally one of the best things about that season. We also got Bradley from that same season, who was actually more so casted to fit the Superfan archetype, as Jacob was more of a nervous nerd archetype. Bradley's gameplay was the exact opposite from Jacob and most Survivor superfans, as he was cocky, arrogant, and didn't hide how highly he thought of himself. This shocking character arc made for some great TV, but ultimately, he was seen as too threatening to Navidi, with Dom and Chelsea in fact throwing a challenge to get rid of him, just missing out on the jury. And lastly, our most recent Survivor superfan, Zach Wurtenberger, aka the man who had the top comment on the infamous Chimp Reddit thread. Zach absolutely screamed superfan in his short stay during Survivor 42, making that clear in all his confessionals and social media posts, and even referenced the Survivor Wiki page during his elimination. But unfortunately for Zach, he played more of a Jacob Derwin game as opposed to an Adam Klein game. He spread rumors of Tori's idol, which made Tori lose trust in him, and he openly admitted to costing the tribe the challenge at the puzzle, despite Ika already being behind at that point. Making yourself a target like that is an absolute no-no, especially in a tribe of 6. With his young allies of Tori and Swati turning on him to save themselves, and Drea's plan to take out Roxroy being too risky this early on, Zach was literally a unanimous vote off, as he played a shot in the dark to no avail, ultimately leading to a first boot. I found this episode super interesting, as the entire time, I was convinced we were getting the classic bossy downfall edit from Roxroy, and him failing at the challenge made me all that more convinced. Yet, out of nowhere, Zach basically volunteered himself for elimination, and the small comment he made earlier about Tori's idol came back to bite him big time. While it obviously must have sucked for Zach to be the first boot, at least he found his true love in Fiji.
Zach voted out.
Your crush.
Marianne, huge reaction.
I told my tribe, and I guess I'll tell all of you, Zach is like every type of white guy that I have a crush on, so there goes that.
Really?
Yeah.
So a blossoming love affair is over?
No, not on Survivor, though. If we met, like, on a tribe swap, connected after, and then after this is over.
Before we finish, let's talk about a couple of noteworthy women superfans. The 3 that pop into my mind are Gabby, Aubrey, and Hannah, as most would definitely think they fit that stereotype when first looking at them. they're all given the quirky oddball label, because of course, women Survivor fans have to be called oddballs. But nonetheless, these women all had great runs, with Aubrey being the epitome of a smart and strategic female superfan. I'll also give credit to Gavin and Nick, as the article considers them to fit the superfan archetype. However, I personally don't see it. Still, the two both obviously had great runs during their combined 3 outings in Survivor. So there you have it, guys, the success and failures of superfans in Survivor. As you can see, Survivor superfans have been quite successful. I guess for me personally, the first thing I think of when I think of superfan is people like Jacob and Zach, who let the pressure of playing their dream get the best of them. But as you can see, this archetype has produced 3 winners, 4 if you include Nick, a couple of runner-ups, and Rob C was considered the best to never win for a very long time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and feel free to leave a comment down below of a player, male or female, that you would consider a Survivor superfan, and I can answer why I didn't include them in the video. If you're a Survivor superfan like the players in this video, then smash the like and subscribe button for weekly Survivor content, and leave a comment down below if you think you would play more like Jacob or Todd if you were casted on Survivor. With all that said, thanks once again everyone, and I'll see you next time.